What's going on, guys? This is Chandler Smith, and today I'm going to be talking about all of the renovations you should avoid when you've invested in a piece of real estate that you're going to use as a rental property. So with that being said, let's jump into it. Now, if this is the first time to my channel, make sure that you push that like button and subscribe to the channel. And just so you have a little bit of background, I've been investing in real estate for the last 7 years. I currently own over 70 doors of rental real estate, and I've had the opportunity to do a bunch of renovations. Now, I wouldn't say I'm the master of renovations when you're talking about a fix and flip property to sell, but I would say that I've gotten very good at knowing what to put my money into for a rental property to make sure that I maximize my returns. So I'm gonna talk about the things that you should put your money into because they're gonna help yield a greater return on your investment and increase rents. I'm also gonna talk about the things that you should avoid that I see a lot of novice investors pouring money into when really that's only hurting their return. I'm sure there are going to be certain things that I don't talk about, and that's going to leave you wondering, well, wait, what about this? Should I put money into this? And so I'm going to teach you a general rule that I use that's been extremely beneficial in knowing what to put my money into when it comes to a renovation. And the reason I think this rule is so helpful is I went to Puerto Rico with my buddy, Meet Kevin. Now, if you haven't followed Meet Kevin, you've got to make sure that you go and follow his channel as well because he is the man when it comes to talking about real estate investing. But what we found is a lot of his renovations, he was spending $20,000 to $40,000 on his renovation. Where with me, on my renovations, I was never spending more than $5,000 to $10,000. Now, granted, there are some properties that are worse than others, but a lot of our properties were pretty similar. And so we were saying, holy cow, why are you spending more than I am on these renovations? And what we found really quickly is it's because in his market, the average purchase price of properties was substantially higher. On top of that, the rents were substantially higher, and the amount that you could increase after a renovation was also substantially higher. So with me, if I was to spend $40,000 on a renovation on one of the properties that I've bought here, it would be really hard to get the rents up from where they already were or where they could be on even a garbage place to making it a really, really over-the-top nice place. It wouldn't make sense because my return wouldn't be there. So with every market being different, I decided to create a rule that would work in literally every market. Whether you're in Idaho, California, wherever, this rule is something that I use to determine if it is worth spending on something within your renovation. And the way that I use this rule is I just pretty much decided, look, any money I'm spending, I need to be getting at least a 15% return on that investment into the renovation. Now, if you want to make that higher, make it 20, make it 25%, but you need to determine if this investment is going to increase your cash flow by a 15% return. So the way that I would determine this is if I'm looking at a property, and it's a real simple calculation, so I'm going to do it right here on my phone. So let's say that you're looking at a property, you've purchased it, and the renovations you want to do are going to be $10,000. So you're going to plug $10,000 into your calculator, and you're going to multiply it by 0.15. Now, this gives you $1,500. So I'm going to divide this by 12, and that means that if I'm going to invest $10,000 into a property, I need to, at the minimum, be able to increase rents by $125. Now, some of you might say, Chandler, that's super conservative. You should do more. But for me, if I can get a 15% return, then obviously I'm going to invest that money. That makes sense to me. Now, if your limit is, no, I want a 25% return or 20% return, then go that route. The other thing you need to remember is renovations always end up being more expensive than you expect. And so a lot of times if you overshoot your budget, maybe make your mark 20% or 25%. For me, I feel like I've got it figured out where I know right where my renovations are going to be because most of my renovations involve simple things like flooring or paint or different other things that I know right where my cost is going to be on. And those are the things that in my market raise the value the most to where I can increase the rents the most. And so we're going to get into that in a minute. But just remember, when it comes to the rule, look how much you're going to invest into a renovation and make sure that you can increase your yearly rents by that number multiplied by 0.15. Unless you're wanting an even bigger return, and then you can multiply it by 0.2 or 0.25. However, I personally feel like if you can get a 15% return on your investment in a renovation, then it is more than worth putting that money into the property. Now, what's different about me from Meet Kevin is a lot of the time I'm not investing in single family homes. I'm doing duplexes, fourplexes, eightplexes, 24plexes. I'm doing these bigger units that when someone is going to calculate a refinance or a purchase, they're not looking at anything other than the rents. Now, they're still going to look at the property and make sure it's clean, but what Kevin has done that's unique is he is renovating in hopes that he can refinance down the road or resell or get this add to his net worth based on what it's going to be worth, not as an investment property, but because that's what a home that has those kinds of renovations is worth for a home buyer. And that's another thing you need to determine what you're investing for, because for me, I'm just going for an increase in rents because an increase in rents means an increase in value of the property. It also means an increase in cash flow. Where with what Kevin is doing, or if you're looking into doing a single family home and refinance or sell, it's more than just the rents, because someone that might come to buy it isn't necessarily going to buy it as an investment property. They're going to buy it as a single family home. So that's another point I want to make sure I touch on, where single family homes are slightly different than multifamily stuff. Now, with me covering all of that, now I want to jump into the things that I believe are worth investing in when it comes to a renovation compared to the things that are not. And if you're doing it for a single family home or in a different market, you've got to make sure that the rule I taught you earlier applies. So first off, I want to show you this video. We just bought this property and it's kind of a fixer-upper, and Maddie's never seen it, so we're gonna let her take the first peek here. This is a property that I just renovated, and I'm not even completely finished right now, but when you walked in, it smelled horrendous.
It stinks.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. You'd go in and the carpets were just covered in pet damage and stains and all kinds of nastiness. And so when I walk in, I'm looking saying, this is awesome, because I know flooring is something that is pretty inexpensive. You can get some very nice LVT flooring that's gonna give you a hard surface that isn't gonna get beat up by tenants, and that when they walk in, they're gonna say, wow, this feels new. So that's the first one, is flooring. The next one that's probably the biggest thing that you can do is paint. Paint is huge. As a matter of fact, with paint, it not only is gonna make it look way better, it's gonna get rid of the dings, the scratches, the dents, all of the little things that are in the walls, any filth, but it's also gonna help eliminate any smell when you're purchasing a property that's very stinky. Now, the last couple that I've found make a huge difference in being able to increase your rents, but are pretty inexpensive, are putting down nicer countertops. Now, this doesn't mean granite countertops. I'm gonna tell you not to do granite countertops later, but this means a nice countertop that you can get for cheap that makes it feel new. The other thing that I love investing in is bathroom vanities, or things to just make the bathroom look cute. You don't wanna go in and rip everything out of the bathroom. You wanna go in and find a way to make the bathroom that you have make cute and make it look rentable. The last thing that I do a lot of changes with is the lighting. Now, lighting can be expensive. However, if you find the right connection with Lowe's or with some provider to where you can get cheap lighting that makes it look new and that really brightens up the area, it makes a huge difference when you're trying to rent it. Those are my go-tos, and those are usually the big things that I invest money on. Now, I might do a little things to spruce up the exterior, but I'm trying to spend as little as possible. And with all of those things in my renovations, they usually meet my rule times 0.25, because they're going to yield huge results on rents. A good example of this is with this renovation I just did. It probably could have been rented for, heck, maybe $900 if I rented it as it was and tried to clean up the carpets. I wouldn't have been able to get out all of the smell. It would have looked nasty. If I would have just tried to rent it, maybe $800, $900, I could find a crappy tenant that would have destroyed it. However, I was able to go in, spend under $10,000 and take it from 8 to 900 to now being able to rent it for $1,400 a month. And that's just from doing the flooring, the paint, and a couple little things to spruce it up. So now I'm looking at an investment property that I've only invested $10,000 in, but I've probably raised rents $500 to $600. That's a huge return on your investment, and those are the kind of renovations I look for. Now, would I have renovated it in the same way if the return would have been smaller? Definitely, because it still would have met my requirement. However, I love finding those renovations that the multiple is way higher. And just to show you the multiple on that, if you check into it, I was able to raise rents, we'll just say a flat 500. You're going to take this $500 per month. So you're going to multiply it by 12, divide that by the $10,000 investment. That's giving me a 60% return on that money. So right away, I'm looking at that renovation saying, game over. This is an incredible investment, a great place to put my money. Now, you've seen some of the things that I really like renovating, and what you should have noticed is I'm getting a substantially larger return than that 15%. However, I wanted to make that real general for most markets, and I would tell you if there's a renovation that can get you a 15% return on your rents that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise, I think it's worth it to do that renovation. However, don't go into a property where you can get a 60% return making these big changes and then try and nickel and dime on the little things to where you bring it down to a 15% return. Don't misinterpret the rule. If you can get the 60% return, do it, and then don't overspend, because you want to do what is going to give you the greatest return on your money. You don't want to just spend money until it trickles down to that 15% return. And so I use that as a rule, but again, make sure you're smart with it and you're getting the biggest return possible with the renovations that you're doing. With that being said, I want to talk about the things that I usually avoid in a renovation. Now, some of these things are things that others might do in their market because they're going to get them the return that they're wanting. However, in my market, these things don't make sense. These are things like replacing all of the cabinets in the kitchen rather than painting them or just sanding them and making them look clean. You don't need to go in and rip everything out and put in this brand new kitchen. The same goes with appliances. A lot of times the appliances work great for rental and people don't care that much to where it's going to increase rents at all if they've got an oven that's a couple years older or this brand new nice stainless steel oven. Another one that I've seen a lot of people make mistakes with is redoing all of the walls. A lot of times you've got this weird vinyl plank type stuff on the walls. Leave it, paint it, it looks fine. It's not going to hurt your rents to put some paint on it and make it look nice. However, some people are gonna go in, they're gonna rip all of it off, they're gonna re-sheetrock the whole thing, end up spending a ton of money when it's just not necessary. Same goes with some of the weirder older ceilings. Now, again, people might disagree with me, but when I go in and I see a ceiling that looks nice, but old, it's one of those ceilings with the metal and then panels, if it looks clean, I'm gonna leave it. I'm not gonna strip it all down and try and re-sheetrock the ceiling because that's a ton of money and it's not going to increase my rents. Another thing is a lot of times people are wanting to go in and redo the entire tubs or toilets or sinks or these things that are pretty big ticket price items, when if you can go in and clean them up or refinish them or find a way to make them look nice without spending big money, or if they look decent, you don't need to spend the money because people are gonna walk in and they're gonna say, wow, this has new flooring, this has new freshly painted walls, it looks clean, it smells clean, that toilet looks a little older, but you know what? Those push more water, it probably will get things down a little cleaner than one of the new ones would anyways, so what the heck, I like this place, it looks clean, I'm gonna rent it. When adding those couple things wouldn't increase the rents. So when you do a renovation, make sure that it's at least reaching that 15% return rule. And I would even plan above, maybe a 20 or 25% return if you don't know exactly where your costs are going to come in on that renovation. So make sure that's a focus. The other thing is make sure that if you can pull a greater return by doing less, that you do it. Don't go in and do these things like the flooring and the paint that are instantly going to increase your rents to where you're getting a 60% return on that, and then come back and do something that's only going to get you a 5 or a 10% return on your rents because you have the money to spend. That doesn't make sense. Make sure you're finding a way to capitalize on the greatest return, and don't go do the little dinky stuff that's only going to hurt your overall return. Now, just to give you a quick recap, make sure that you follow the rule that I've given for your market. Find a way to increase rents. Make sure that you understand the difference between renting a single family home or renting a multifamily home, because your return or your increase in net worth or property value is going to be determined more by rents in a multifamily home than it will be in a single family home. Make sure that you remember that even if you can get that 15% return, don't skimp down your return by spending money you don't need to. If it's a property where you can get a 60% return by just focusing on flooring and paint, there's no need to do more if it's going to end up hurting your return for that extra little pinch. So make sure that you're focusing on maximizing your return on your money. And if you focus on those things so that you're not spending on dumb stuff, you're gonna end up having a ton of success with your renovations. You're gonna be able to increase your rents in a huge way. You're gonna be able to find other deals that some people might avoid because they're not necessarily turnkey, but you know, with a couple simple, cheap renovations, you can get their rents way up, find yourself incredible tenants, and put yourself in a place where you have created a huge passive income for yourself. Now, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you push that like button and subscribe to the channel, because the goal of all of my videos is to help you to create a huge passive income. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great day.